Black Sheep by Brant Menswar gives us the opportunity to understand as we've developed our character as people, however old we are, as we've developed our character over the years, it helps us to understand what we really value and then allow us to take those values and then go live them out in society for the betterment of our communities.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Book Talk Lounge brought to you by the Reader Lounge. My name is Emiliano, and today I am very happy to introduce you to one of the sections of the new show. This new section is all about transformational books. Here, I invite people from the community, people from the TRL's ecosystem, people within the ecosystem of the Reader Lounge to talk about books that have been transformational for them, books that have been very valuable to their lives and their journey. My guest today and my first guest for this section of the show is my friend Ryan Mannion. Ryan is a friend who I met over a year ago, and he is a very authentic, caring, and curious individual who has done very valuable work at brands such as Book Thinkers. The book that we'll discuss today is titled Black Sheep. Unleash the Extraordinary, Awe-Inspiring, Undiscovered You, and the author is Brant Menswar. Black Sheep is all about the core values in your life, your life's purpose and principles, which will guide you to live more authentically and intentionally. And that's what Ryan and I talk about today. So make sure you get prepared to listen to this very valuable and fun conversation of Ryan and I, in which we talk about this incredible book, Black Sheep by Brant Menswar. All right, so Ryan, welcome to the Book Talk Lounge. You are my first guest on this podcast, and again, thank you for coming, man.
I just found out I'm the first guest, and it's an honor because what you've built is awesome, Emiliano. I'll continue to be your fan. I'll continue to support you, and it's amazing the people you continue to bring on the show. So I love the new concept. I'm excited about it, and I'm always your fan.
Thanks, Ryan. So yeah, let's get into the episode. As I told you, this section of the podcast will be basically about people from the community sharing stuff, sharing their favorite books, especially. And yeah, so you are my first guest, and I would like you to tell us which is the book that you're going to talk about.
I'm going to talk about Black Sheep by Brant Menswar.
About Black Sheep. I have it here.
I love it, man.
Great. Yeah. So could you just start by telling us the story of how this book came into your life and what that experience was like?
I think for me, I had a really unique experience with the book. I loved the book. I loved the purpose for the book. And it came into my life randomly through Book Thinkers, which of course you're familiar with. But once I met Brant, I realized how incredible of a human he is, and I realized how important his message is. And so I also had the opportunity, he gave a course, which I'm surprised more people didn't take advantage of, but I was one who did. And he gave a course on the book. So a lot of the exercises within the book, he put the group through. And so that was my early kind of entry into his book, was reading it and also doing the exercises, which, as we know, is really valuable.
What was the experience of meeting Brant like? What was like your first impression of him?
He's a creative genius.
He is.
He's incredibly creative. And then we got to meet in person, and he actually helped me buy my first guitar because he's a guitar player. But when I got to meet him, I learned he almost made it to major leagues for baseball. And, a lot of the people, fortunately, that we network with are creative in nature. And it's far more than just what they're doing today, but they've had a lifetime of it, which is why I'm so excited about you.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks again. And then, so Brant and the book came into your life, and then what was like the process? What was the process like? What was the experience of reading like?
It's a good question, and I think what happened was really unique, and that's why I think this book impacts me so much, which is why it's a great question. So I read the book, I went through the courses, and then I met Brant. He gave me the opportunity to meet him. And when I met Brant, he questioned me on the core values. As we get into the book, you'll learn it's about core values, the core values that I pulled from the book. And then he started to test me on them. So he started to put me through the exercises again that were in the book, plus some. And as he was putting me through that, he was not only helping me define my core values, but and redefine them. They've changed since I initially put them together, but also he helped me to now help others define their core values. And I don't know about you, but I don't think there's few things bigger in life than understanding your core values, in my opinion. So it's been a process. The book has been more than just a book. It's been a process.
Nice. I like this idea of the process. And then, so, I mean, you are in the personal development world, and I guess that you had already heard about values and principles and all this, had you?
For sure. Yeah.
And what was the shift like? Because Brant takes a different approach to values and how to use them in your life, and that's different to how other people approach it. So yeah, how was that shift like?
Brant's the man. I think, when I was growing up, I always heard like, find someone, a partner, like a romantic partner who is aligned with your core values, and you naturally see, like in America, at least a lot of times you see Republicans hang out with Republicans and you see Democrats hang out with Democrats. And a lot of times to some degree, their core values maybe aligns. Yeah, the process for me was just early on in my life, knowing how important core values are. And once I read the book, I realized how to define my core values. So I already knew the importance, but now it's okay, now how do I define them? And then one of the things I, realized is that I would think of my core values as things that mean a lot to me. But as I thought through some of them, I don't necessarily act on them consistently. So then I started to question if those are actually my core values. So now what I have for core values, I have 5 core values. They are things that I can consistently say day to day, I lead my life with. And so like, it's no longer a theory of this is my value, but it's a recollection of every day that I've lived this way. And if I don't, it's very obvious that it's not a core value, but it's something that I would potentially love to be like, but I'm not like, and I just want to be myself at the end of the day. So it's really important now that I've actually defined those values, not conceptually as something I wish to be the case, but who I actually am and what I actually live by every day. And that's really what changed for me.
You're mentioning something like really interesting, and I think about this as authenticity. About actually living who you are and not just living who you want to be. Yeah, I mean, could you get deeper into that idea and into how authenticity is like an important part of your life today?
Yeah. Well, what's a good core value that I had early on? Let's say family, right?
Hmm.
Um, I love my family. You'll see on my Instagram, one of the things he says is like, look at someone's Instagram and you could pick up kind of what they value, right? So if you looked at mine, you'd probably see I value my family, but I also am a nomad who travels all over the world, and I value that adventure and that freedom and that entrepreneurial drive probably more than I don't want to say more than my family, but I realize that if I'm doing that every day, and it's not like I'm calling my family every day, that's probably an indicator of what my core value is. And so, things that I would love to have been my core value just aren't necessarily them. And family is something that's huge in my life, but I pulled it off my core value list because it's not like every day I associate with my family. So, and it's not like I'm someone who lives in the neighborhood of my mother and I plan to stay there forever. I love them. I speak so highly of them all the time, but it's not something that is consistently in my day to day, nor, do I necessarily see it completely in my day to day. And so I pulled that off, as hard as that sounds and as opposite as that may show if you know who I am. And, my core values became things that are very, very true to me every day. So courage is something that I lead with in everything. Curiosity, I lead with in everything. Empathy, I lead with in everything, unless you catch me on a really bad day. And then I've got connection, which is kind of a holistic representation of how I value my relationships. So those are my core values, and they're things that I lead with every single day. And it's kind of interesting for me to go through the process of being true to myself, and that is being true to myself, right? I mean, if I don't see family every day, or if I'm not connecting with them really consistently, then maybe that's not my highest core value, and that's okay, because it still is a value of mine. It still is a core value of mine, and I can share that openly on here.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
hopefully that gives you a sense of the authenticity.
Yeah, I guess that it does. And I'm thinking that it would be important, like to, share what the difference between a black sheep value and the normal value is. So could you share that from your perspective?
I think that is the difference, to be honest. I think a black sheep value is something that you've demonstrated consistently applies to you. Um, Consistently. You look back and you say, my days have, you know, my favorite days in life, my favorite achievements in life, they've all kind of revolved around these values. I lead every day going into this day with this value. Like that's your black sheep value. That's your, that's a set of values that are deeply embedded that you can demonstrate are your values. So I would just say a black sheep value is a more kind of like focused version of a value. It's the same, but it's something that you can say authentically and very truly you believe represents you because you've done the work to recognize it as such.
Hmm. And then I would like to get into the book more and into like your personal takeaways from it, and then like yeah, how did you apply them into your life? But specifically, like talking about discovering your black sheep values, what would you like suggest to anyone to to help them like find their core values, well, their black sheep values, and define them more?
Yeah, I think you should read the book and then go through the
Yeah,
exercises and
that's the
then
first thing.
find a peer just like I did to go over this with, and then continue to do it and recognize core values as being truly fundamental to your success as a human being on this planet. I mean, I don't, I for a second, Emiliano, I almost pitched Brant on going on tour with him and just like being his fanboy on stage with his book, because I really think that core values are the root of the human connection that we have in our life. It's the fundamental aspect of being true to ourselves. And I see I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I see so many relationships. Sorry about that, man. I see so many relationships that maybe the people don't truly know themselves. And so if you don't know yourself, you're putting everyone in your circle at risk. So all I can say is you have to do the work to get to know yourself, and then you have at least a starting point. Because human connection is complex. Every human is so different. But if you do the work to get to know yourself, at least you have better odds of bringing the right people into your circle for the right reasons, and not wasting their time or wasting your own time.
But then there are also people who maybe don't want to define their black sheep values or their main core values because they think, and I include myself there sometimes, because we maybe think that if we like define some values or some keywords that we want to live daily, then like our life will be sort of limited, or yeah, I guess that's the word, like limited in some way or in some areas. And I mean, I think of that for me, especially because of my age, and because I wouldn't like love, limiting. Well, yeah, limiting my exploration, I guess, and my development. But I mean, I do have some north stars, some principles, some ideals that I try to live by, like for example, being intentional, or I don't know, growing or taking responsibility, or things like that. I think that those are some key values that I have already defined. But then again, I sometimes find myself not wanting to define myself because I guess that it's sort of limiting me. What's your take on that?
My take is that curiosity may be a core value of yours.
Yeah, I mean, It could be.
And I think that if you went through the exercise and you were to exercises over some period of time and you were to discover that curiosity could be a core value of yours, then that doesn't put you in any constraints because you're just a curious human being. And that's what you've known to be. It's, you podcast with all curious and interesting people, right? Like that's what you do every day. So curiosity may be a core value of yours. And if you were to establish that, then you can go into the world knowing that curiosity means a lot. So we have a mutual friend, right? Emilio Ortiz. I
Yeah,
love that kid.
so do
Um,
I.
he has when we were going back and forth a few months ago, and he was talking about his podcast and everything, and what the future of the podcast is going to be, and all this stuff. I started to put him through these exercises, and I come to find out he's just a very curious person, and so he needs to have. I mean, he doesn't need to have the podcast, but there's a lot of value in his life having that podcast because that's the type of person that he is. He's very curious, and that's what the podcast offers him. So I said, continue to do the podcast because it's a part of your value system. So, anyways, a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, I would probably sit here and argue with anyone that doesn't think core values are important, but it's the same as principles, right? Principles are important. There's a lot of things in life that are important, and a lot of what's cool about books and cool about what you're doing here is, books impact people. There's this experience usually around the book, so it's not lost on me that probably Black Sheep, it was an experience for me, and that's probably why it's my favorite book.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to approach. What I'm trying to approach to with the Reader Lounge, the experience of reading. Because in my case, when I think about reading about my relationship with books, it was like 3 years ago that I didn't enjoy reading because of the relationship that I had with books. I had to read books from school and boring books, or just books that I didn't want to read, and so I thought of myself as I didn't think of myself as a reader. Um, but then my relationship started to change because my experience changed. And I think that that's very transformational. The most transformational books for me have been books which with I have had like a very valuable experience. And yeah, I was also I also wanted to ask you about that. Like, do you think that if you didn't have this experience with the book and with Brant and with all of the process, do you think that if that didn't happen, Black Sheep wouldn't be your favorite book?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm not sure if it would be my favorite book if I didn't have the entire experience, for sure. Um, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I think the whole experience is really important. And like the four agreements as an example. You want to talk about authenticity, Emiliano? The four agreements governed my last dating life, my last romantic relationship. And now the four agreements carries tremendous weight in my life. It'll govern the rest of my relationships. And and I had read the four agreements 3 years ago and I was like, oh, this book is average. And now it's like one of my top 10 books of all time. So I really think that the experience is incredibly important, and the experience has so much to do with it, like timing of it in your life. Uh, and if you have the opportunity to meet the author, if you have the opportunity to have a peer that you talk about the book with, like if you're in a relationship that it applies, like all that, and you get the right kind of bundle, and that's your favorite book.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, that's what I'm trying to do with the Reader Lounge and with this whole ecosystem. Maybe this episode is an introduction for someone to read Black Sheep, and then maybe Black Sheep will change their lives for better. And I mean, yeah, that's how it works. And talking again about your experience, um, after you read the book and after you met Brant and after you went through the process of defining your Black Sheep, what happened? What was the what were the following experiences? And I mean, I would like it if you could share a little story or some yeah, some fun story in which you used your any of your Black Sheep values.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that dating relationship that consumed a lot of my life. last year that definitely took into account a lot of the principles of who I am, or the values of who I am. I made a lot of decisions last year that were courageous, whether it was in my dating life or stepping down as CEO of Book Thinkers. Every time and it's tough, man. Imagine stepping down from your baby, like Book Thinkers is more Nick's baby than it is mine.
Mhm.
But or imagine stepping down from a girl that fell totally in love with and told your mom you were gonna marry. Like all those are tough. So I decide who I am as someone that lives with courage in my life, and that's who I've always been. Looking back, it's who I will be looking forward. And knowing that at the core of who I am, that's how my decisions are routed. They're routed through those value systems. Gratitude is one. I have a gratitude room every single morning.
Yeah.
Shout out to Book Thinkers Gratitude Room, 6:30 a.m. Pacific. Gratitude is one of my core values. It's and I yeah. So that anytime I have big decisions in my life, I route them through those core values. When I was stepping down from Book Thinkers, and I mean every time almost, when I was stepping down from Book Thinkers, I went to meet with Nick. We had only talked about it online, um, and that's not a way to have a business partnership for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew how important connection was to me, right? And I knew how important like empathy was to me. And so you can't have relationships kind of like change that drastically without having that connection, and without caring as a person and understanding the situation from an empathetic perspective. So knowing those are two of my core values, I took a flight down to Florida and we spent like 3 days together hashing out where the future of the business is going to go, with Nick as CEO of the brand. So every decision I have, I route through those values, and it's really important to do that. And honestly, if ever there's a time where I'm like feeling fear, and courage is just my core value. Anytime I'm feeling fear, because I am human, I'm super courageous, but I am human. I realize that courage is my core value. So what am I doing?
And then, well, you mentioned empathy. For example,
Yeah.
I can think of how you can be empathetic daily on a daily basis, but then, for example, courage is something maybe more abstract, if we could call it that way. How do you maybe live courage daily, or make sure, if that's your intention, to live courage daily, if you do not face, if for any reason in that day you do not face any situation in which you maybe have fear, and in which you have to step into courage. Yeah.
I think something about values, and as you continue to just live, what's McConaughey's line?
Just keep living.
Just
Yeah.
keep living. Yeah. As long as you continue to just keep living with your brand and all your entrepreneurial ventures, I think you'll just come to realize that, or at least if you were into the core values from Black Sheep, or maybe it's principles, whatever it is, you'll come to realize they're most important in big moments. So day to day, like, if I don't know if day to day necessarily, I'm thinking to myself like, oh, Ryan, like, you better be courageous and make this cold call. I'm sure it does pop in my head for sure, but it's the check-ins that remind me of, am I living to my core values? And those check-ins are usually like, let's say monthly or every few months. And it's usually a check-in is because of a big event, and so like, it's the big events where knowing who you are and how you want to represent yourself in the world, and how you always have, at a fundamental level. When those big events come, now you're like, all right, I know who I am, and I know how I'm going to go through this negotiation, or go through this breakup, or go through this entrepreneurial journey, because this is who I am and this is what I need to do. So it could be that for anything, right? It could be that for curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually the big moments, man, where it's like, all right, my core values, I got to live by them. My principles, I got to live by them. So you want to hear a story? Like, I remember my girl wasn't talking to me for like a couple of days or something. I was like, something really weird is going on. And all I wanted to do was like say, screw this. I'm taking a step back. Like, this isn't working out for me. But that's not a really courageous thing to do. So I remember exactly where I was in Cartagena, Colombia, when I left my room, and I said, all right, I gotta be courageous. Like, this is who I am. So I think I sent her a text. I said, hey, I'm stepping back in this relationship, and unless we could talk about this. And then she's like, all right, let's talk about it. And then I laid out this entire plan of where we're headed together in the future. And so anyways, that was me when I could have kind of backed down, realizing that I would regret that forever because I'm a courageous human being.
I think that something important to point out here is like how black sheep values and black sheep values and your core values lead you to step over your programs and your fears and live authentically. Do you like resonate with that last statement, thinking about this stage in your life?
100%, man. And I think it's really important for people at my stage of life, but the earlier you can resonate with these things or whatever age you are, I just think it's really important. I think a lot of people go through life um, confused. And I think a lot of people look for like, we had this conversation before, like goals or like these North, these purpose. So we talk about purpose,
Purpose.
I think your purpose is to live true to yourself. I think that's what your purpose is. And so, if you could do that, then that's great. Like, I'm not big into like these goals or these purpose or all these things. It's just live true to who you are. And if you have a few things that help you do that, that's great. And that's what I would give for anyone's advice. And I think there's people who have lived their whole life and are like, grandparents at this point who have never really understood that. And because of that, they are still kind of confused, but also got into relationships that, maybe aren't right for them because they had similar hobbies or they, whatever, something kind of like stupid that can be changed, but you can't change who you are. And so that's why your values are important. That's why your principles are important. And that's how you should be governing your life. In my opinion, those are the people you should have around you, should have the same values. So now I'm out on the dating market again, and I know exactly what I value. And I'm looking for people with the same values. And
You
that
know,
doesn't mean the same hobbies and stuff that you could change.
yeah, I would actually love to get into dating with you because I think that it will be very interesting. But maybe we could leave that for another podcast because that will take a much longer amount of time. But yeah, thinking about dating and about relationships and about us as a society, how do you think that not knowing our core values and our black sheep values, the main things that we value, how do you think that when we don't know that, um, how does society get affected? How is that affecting us today? With COVID or with economics or whatever. How do you think that this relationship between core values and not knowing them is affecting society?
Mm. Well, I usually like to keep things kind of simple. I'd be curious if you have a broader perspective on this. For me, I just think like if you don't really know yourself, then you're entering into relationships with like your partner, not really knowing yourself, and then they don't really know who you are, and then it just presents challenges. I mean, being with someone for 30 years, if you believe in marriage, 50 years, 60 years, I mean, that's intense. And so if all of us, right, for the most part, believe in marriage and get into relationships, and you don't know yourself enough to allow the other person to really get to know you, um, you're getting with the wrong person. And then that leads to a lifetime of potentially unhappiness or change, which then affects your entire family, and may prevent them in some ways from really getting to know themselves because they were never, let's say, mentored as a child because they had a broken home or they had a parent who never did the hard work on themselves. Like, I think it has a massive trickle down effect, massive, because every person, that wife, let's say in my case, if I didn't know myself, I'm getting a poor relationship, she could be unhappy every day because she's with the wrong person. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me. It just means that we're not right for each other because
Mhm.
we never talked about what we value. We just loved going to football games together for 3 years and ended up getting married, and that has a trickle down effect forever. So it's all over our society. In the US, divorce is at like 50% or something. I don't know. Maybe people should get to know themselves a little bit before they get to know others. I don't know. Just an idea, Emiliano.
Yeah, I mean, everything here are just ideas. But yeah, actually, my take on this and how I sort of understand this whole topic of core values and black sheep values and all that is about living intentionally. My biggest takeaway from Brant's book, from Black Sheep, was this idea of deliberate intention, and I mean that for me was life changing in some way, and it was like the biggest thing, the biggest golden nugget that I got out of the book, and the biggest thing that I have applied. Beside, well, no, actually not besides. What has been your biggest, like takeaway and the biggest thing that you have applied from the book specifically? Maybe not from the experience, but from the book. Was it like the process uh, of defining your black sheep values, or what was it?
Actually, it was living intentional to your values, really. It was like I said, defining the values was huge. I had never defined my values before, and that's definitely a starting point. But Black Sheep, really, the whole experience. So the book helped me define them. The experience helped me define them. But then this experience also gave me the understanding that I have the opportunity to live by them intentionally, and that was really a huge. So you're right, man. You nailed it. That it really is about living intentionally, more so than just knowing your core values. But it's a good starting point for sure.
It is. And to start wrapping up, if you could, just like review the book in a couple sentences for anyone listening, so that they maybe get encouraged to purchase and to go through the book and through the experience. Yeah, how would you review the book, and what would you share about it?
Black Sheep by Brant Menswar gives us the opportunity to understand, as we've developed our character as people, however old we are, as we've developed our character over the years, it helps us to understand what we really value, and then allow us to take those values and go live them out in society for the betterment of our communities. Um, yeah, that would be it.
Nice. I like it. And yeah, that's my take as well on the book. And yeah, well, so that's been it, mostly about the book. Is there anything else that you want to share regarding the book, or the experience, or Black Sheep, or whatever?
Yeah, I think I'd love to hear what your principles are.
My principles or my Black Sheep values? Because I mean, I haven't defined my Black Sheep values, but I do know my principles.
So just real quick, I mean, I live my life right by those Black Sheep values,
Mhm.
which I shared with you earlier. How do you live? How do you govern your big decisions? I think it's
Um,
important because there are different ways.
Yes, yes. So through the years, I have been developing a personal philosophy, and over the last months, I have been able to define it in some keywords. And how I usually share it is, yeah, how I name it, how I quote it is the following way. So it's design your life. That's the first part. Choose your struggle. No rush. Just keep living. So there are four parts of it. And the first two parts, design your life and choose your struggle, are basically about being intentional with your suffering. I think that I learned about this on Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And he shares that if you were to run a marathon and you run it because you want to, you would probably be happy to run it, even if you are suffering through the process. You wouldn't be, you would be having the pain, but you wouldn't be like suffering mentally or hoping for it to be over. But then if a guy came with a gun and then he told you that if you don't run, he will kill your family or whatever, then I mean your suffering is not so you don't suffer voluntarily. You're suffering because you don't want the other consequence. And I mean, and then, well, you suffer more, not just physically but also mentally, because you want this to be over, but you cannot make it be over. And so that's sort of a radical example, let's say, that's given in Mark Manson's book. But that's my take on the first part, on living intentionally, on choosing your struggle. And
Very Mexican,
very Mexican. Why? I'm curious about that. What do you
right? I
say
mean,
that?
Mexican culture, for the most part, has that balance between life and death. And death is a big element, and it sounds like it may be rooted a little bit there. But yeah, what was the second part?
I like that. Very Mexican. Nice. Um, yeah. The second part. Well, yeah. That's design your life, choose your struggle, and it's basically about choosing your struggle, choosing how you suffer voluntarily, giving a meaning to your suffering, and also deciding intentionally how it is that you want to live. And then the second part, the one of no rush, just keep living, is mostly about the process. So let's say that the first part is about like how you decide to go through the process, or what process you decide to go through, and then the second part is mostly about how you go through it. So for me, no rush, just keep living, goes around many ideas and many mantras, let's call them. So for example, the Stoic mantra of amor fati, or as Eckhart Tolle shares it, one with life, or no rush is mostly about like slowing down, being present, and I mean, no, not rushing into things to be over, because they will eventually be over. um and then just keep leading for me is also about that, about like amor fati. Let's just continue onward. And I mean, it's nice looking back and remembering stuff and learning from our mistakes, but it's also not good, just being hooked on the past, or hooked on the future and stuck there. So for me, it's mostly about like presence and enjoying the present moment. And I so the last page of Green Lights, in the last page of Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey shares he shares some last ideas, and one of those says something like, when you can create your when you can create your wind, just enjoy, or it's something like that. But when you can't, just go, just flow and hope for the best. It goes something like that. And for me, it's something similar. So it's mostly about, just enjoying, being present, and, just about keeping living. And that, I would say that that's how I review my principles. So it's mostly about living intentionally, trying to be present. Also, I mean, that's not directly included on the phrase, but it's also about like trying to do good for others, trying to add value, trying to be a person of value and not to be an asshole, basically. And yeah, that's how I would define it. So basically about living intentionally, also about exploring and enjoying, being present, living consciously, and about having a good relationship with other people.
Which makes sense, right? Because you're on this journey that is probably bigger than most people who are in high school. So it makes sense, yeah, for sure, to process things that way, and that's awesome, man. And I'm so happy for you with this new podcast, bringing a lot of people in from your audience, sharing their favorite experiences with your books, or with books. it's cool you've connected with so many high profile authors. I could have said that my favorite book was Ignite Possibilities or The Albatross or Talk to
Yeah.
Everyone.
We can
But I
actually
think
talk
it's
about that
cool.
in a future episode if you want.
Yeah, but I think it's no, I think it's cool that you're bringing together a bunch of really awesome people in your community that aren't necessarily authors, but they're readers, and talking about the entire experience of what you've gotten out of a book. I think you'll get a lot of interesting stories. It's different than what you were doing with the authors to
Yeah.
some degree, but I'm really looking forward to the rest of this season, man. And hopefully someone out there who's listening to this dives into Black Sheep and hits me up, Ryan W. Mannion on Instagram, and I'd be happy to talk to them and help them to find their core values. Because that
Great.
was the biggest takeaway from this Brant Menswar thing too, is I'm now a pillar in, I think, society that can go out and help other people like us to find their core values.
Great. Well, again, thank you. I guess, from my perspective, is that you lived some of your core values in this conversation. I hope it was that way and that it was also valuable for you. And yeah, again, thanks for coming, man. And for people listening, Ignite Possibilities and The Albatross are two books, and they were written by Ryan. And yeah, man, so we can talk about them in the future if you want. I mean, I would want to do it.
Cool, man. Yeah, sounds great.
Great. Well, again, is there anything else you would like to share before wrapping up with the episode?
No, man. Thanks for having me on. Keep rocking, man. Keep building the community. Pretty soon you'll be big or bigger than Book Thinkers, and we're cheering you on all along the way.
Let's go. Hey, so thanks for listening to this episode. I hope that it was valuable for you and that you learned valuable stuff. If you did, please share it to a friend of yours and, just expand the impact. Make sure you are subscribed to the Reader Lounge on YouTube, on podcasting platforms, on Twitter, on Instagram. That was it for today. And so, yeah, I will be talking to you next time. Just keep reading. My name is Emiliano, and goodbye.